dogs. So, so I see the dog, and the neighbor, he has his dog outside. He's cleaning the snow off his porch. And the dog, every time he hears the noise of the thing moving and scraping the floor, he attacks it. And he's biting him. It made me realize, Bapoil, how what you said about the dogs only relate to like physicality. They you know. Mamish, you could see he had no concept that this thing is not an animal. It's just a thing scraping on the floor. Because he thought it was dominating his area, you know?
All right, gentlemen. We were yoitzem knosset b'dichase. Yes, man.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, when it says.
Good one.
We are on page 163, and the bottom third of the page, the line begins with the word haprotim, best that I can recall. You agree? No? What do you?
It's like 2 lines above.
Okay, we did learn that, but don't mind going back. Unless I thought we learned it. Okay. So the Rebbe says we want to understand what is Chochma, Bina, and Das. And to understand, we start looking what is in general the inyan klolus inyan hamoichin. That's the way the Rebbe expresses it. Klolus inyan hamoichin. What is the general inyan of function of moichin? And he says that in everything that a person does, he first decides and recognizes in Moyach that this is the right thing for him to do. That this is suitable for him. And the first moment where he recognizes in his seichel that this is an appropriate thing, the first moment, it comes to him as a what we call a spark, just a glance, just a quick recognition of the inyan. And only afterwards does it translate into hasaga, into full-fledged understanding. Excuse me. This inyan we discussed at great length last time. Yes? Okay. But this inyan we discussed at length last time. Yeah. We pointed out, we identified, so to speak, what we mean by Chochmah.
Which word did you say we're starting?
the line begins with skira. וכמו שהוא בכל דבר עשייה. The important point which we discussed, which I'd like you to reflect every time we talk about seichel, is that seichel is not an add-on to the person. It's not something that is forced upon the person. This is something which he, as a person, has naturally this value, this recognition. But before it comes into seichel, it is not known. It is something which is part of him. Like we said, if you see a person in the gutter and he is not acting like a human being, you don't doubt that he is not acting according to the way he himself wants to act. But you don't know no suffix. You have no suffix. That he is not, you know that he is not acting according to the way he himself wants to act. It is.
He wants to act better than that.
He wants to act differently than this. You know that. This is not him. Except he is not aware of it in his seichel. The seichel hasn't developed. But the person is the way the person is.
And his nature is to be not to be in the gutter.
His nature is not to be in the gutter. And this is why when we see a person in the gutter, we have big pity on him. And this is why when we see a Yid, Mechal Shabbos, we have a big pity on him. Why? Because we know that this is not him. He's just not aware of it. So then, when he becomes aware of it, whether it's Shabbos or anything that a person is aware, the seichel only reveals and identifies that which the person is inherently. Okay, you want to bring him up?
שרואים בן אדם שבמצב גרוע, או שהוא, בוא נגיד, שיכור והוא יושב בצד הכביש והוא מבין, או שהוא מחלל שבת או משהו, אתה לא אומר שהוא בן אדם רע, אתה מרחם עליו, ואתה יודע שזה לא, הוא לא יודע מי הוא.
אבל מצד עצמו הוא לא רוצה את זה. זאת אומרת, כשהוא אחר כך לומד ומבין, זה לא דבר נוסף עליו. זהו שהוא מבין מה שהוא הוא. זהו שכל. שכל זה להכיר מה הוא בעצם רוצה. מה הוא בעצם חופץ. And this is why the seichel comes in this order. First there is a glance, and then there is an elaboration. First there is skira, barak, ve'achakach, mevin. The reason for that is because the seichel comes from a source that is higher than seichel. Huh? From מקור. seichel בא מהמקור, ממקור שהוא למעלה מן השכל.
The skira comes before the spark?
What?
You said first comes skira, then comes
No, the spark and the skira, this is two different ways that we define it, that we describe it. Right.
First comes the spark, then understand.
Then comes the understanding. Why? Because the seichel comes from a level, from a source that is higher than seichel. It comes from a source that's called etzem, the essence. It's not seichel. And then it comes into seichel. That's why, in order to come to seichel, it first comes with a spark, and then once you have the spark, you can then elaborate on it in your seichel. Okay? Okay. Okay, now we'll continue further. Ukmoi shehu b'chol dvar muska. As we see in everything kol dover muskel, everything that is a muskel, any understanding that a person has. Harei. So there, bitchilo at first, bon nekudas hahaskola. At first comes forth nekudas hahaskola. Nekuda means the point, the sharp idea. Bederech berikas haseichel bilvad. A derech in a manner, in the form of berikas haseichel. Berikas barak. Barak means a spark. But it just a glance. Oh, I see. Oh, I recognize. Just like, that's why it's called a borok, a spark. Just like if it's perfectly dark and you have a spark, and the spark illuminates the area, so you still don't know in detail exactly what the area looks like, and what everything is, and how everything is situated, and the size of every table and chair and so forth. But you have an idea what the room is about. If you're in a room, in a dark room, and you have a spark, you don't know the exact layout of the room, but you know what the room is about. This is called a spark. Once you know what the room is about, then you know what you're going to be looking for. Meaning the details. Okay, so where are the tables, where are the chairs, and where are the sforim and so forth. מבין?
נכנסים לחדר? בחושך? פתאום יש איזה ברק בחדר, אז יש לך רעיון איך נראה החדר. בלי פרטים. אבל בלי פרטים.
ואחר כך, and afterwards, bo beoirech veroicha. Afterwards it comes down, beoirech veroicha. Beoirech means length, and roichav means width. I'll discuss in a moment in two expressions. Oirech veroicha bahasogo, in comprehension, vahavonas kol haproti, and the understanding of all the details. Oirech and roichav are two expressions. Just as in anything Gashmius, there is the width and the length, right? That's the area. What is the width? The width refers to, if you see, let's say, the front of the table. The width refers to the area that you see in front of you. The length is that how far it extends beyond that which you see. In a seichel, when a person understands that in a seichel, it's also like this. Every idea has a width, meaning it has what this idea already contains. What are the protein that make it up? Oirach, the length, means if I take this idea and I begin to apply it to other things, to other instances, how far can I go? Where is it applicable? Beyond the immediate phase, the immediate position.
So Oirach is a spark?
No. Oirach means is how far you can go with it. where can you apply it?
I'm not sure I understand.
Reichav is immediately apparent then?
What?
The Reichav is immediately apparent. When you look at something, you can immediately see this is how I
Reichav
here.
is right in front of you.
Okay. Yeah, opposite way.
Right. This is the two processes of understanding a seichel. That first, when you have a svara, you have to understand the svara very well. That's the roichav. You have to understand clearly what it entails and what it contains. And then you say, okay, with this svara I can explain this, I can explain this, I can explain this. This is means you go further away, further extending. That's called oirech. You go lengthwise. And this oirech v'roichav can only come after that you have this idea, the spark of the idea. V'zehu moyach ha'chochmo, moyach ha'bina. These are the two moichin, the two parts of the brain of chochma and the brain of bina. Moyach hadas, but then there's a third brain. What is the third brain? The function of the third brain, moyach hadas. Who its function is lahachnis ho'inyan, to bring that inyan b'pnimius klei hamechin, inside the klei hamechin, inside the vessels of the moich. I'll explain in a minute. Let me just go through the words here. To bring this inyan in pnimius klei hamechin, sheyunach ho'inyan betoiv etzloi. That this inyan, yunach means it should rest. The inyan should rest betoiv, well, etzloi, by him. V'yoyer ho'inyan b'moichai. And the inyan should shine in his moich. Moich hadas is quite difficult to understand, and it is the most powerful inyan of moich. There are two levels in understanding in general. Even though we have Chochma, Bina, Vadas, which means three levels, but Chochma and Bina go together. Chochma and Bina go naturally together. The minute a person has a spark, an idea, he immediately sets his mind to understanding it and to define it and describe it. But Das is a separate function. And what is it? And that's why I say there are two levels of understanding. The level of Chochma and Bina is a level where a person understands the inyan clearly, like we say in Bina, he understands with all the protein. But it is like something that separate from himself. He knows and he understands the inyan. It's like a person knows something that is not himself. He knows it clearly, but it's not him. It's a separate inyan, just like a person has something in his pocket. Just like a person has a piece of bread in his pocket. So he has it. But does the bread feed him? Does it make him satisfied? No, it's not inside. So in Chochma and Bina, it is true, as we said before, that this is really a revelation, a koyach that comes from his nefesh, comes from him, but nevertheless, on the level where he is in the goof, the way he thinks, this understanding, as clear as it is, remains something separate from himself. I know it. Das is where he reflects deeper into the inyan. He understands it before, but he reflects deeper into the inyan. The inyan of Das is to bring the inyan to his own moyach. That now it is not something that he learned, not something that he knows about, but something that he himself thinks. This is the way he thinks. Maybe? That's a Das.
The previous was Bina.
Yeah.
That there's the knowledge in him and
Are separate.
Das.
I'll give you a simple illustration. We all learn Breishis, Bara, Elokim, Shamayim, V'Zoretz. Who doesn't know what it says in the Torah that God created Shamayim, V'Zoretz?
Das is Ergesh, right?
Das,
Nisayon.
he's right, it says Exodus Hergesh. Das, let me explain it, okay? Step by step. It is Hergesh, but let's do it step by step. You know, I think maybe about the step by step.
Psia.
So everybody knows Breishis, Bara, Elokim, Shamayim, V'Zoretz. You ask anybody, you ask a child, and he'll answer it. But does that mean that in his own mind, himself, not what he knows the truth, because he learned and he believes it and it was proven to him, all kinds of different things, but his own mind, is this the way he thinks? Is this the way he thinks? That's Das. That's much different, more difficult. This is where he reflects and he says, oh, well, a second. Yeah, everything, Hashem created everything, but look, all of these things Hashem created, they're physical things. How did Hashem create physical things? He has all kinds of difficult things, difficulty are relating to it. Das is where the seichel is connected to the person. But this is the way he thinks. This is the reality. So Das, really, as I said, this is the real power of seichel. This is why when you say a person is responsible, a responsible person, a person by achrayut, who is responsible for the things that he does, and he does things with carefully, with deliberation, we call him a bar das. Everybody heard the word bar das. We don't call him a bar seichel, bar chochmah, because a person can be a chochem and be, chas v'sholom, a total idiot in terms of common sense. And totally not responsible and totally not understanding what's going on.
How can be Chochem not understand?
Because he didn't bring into Das. No, he understands.
It's not a Chochem.
הוא יכול להבין דברים טוב, יש לו שכל טוב, הוא יכול להבין דברים, אבל הוא לא פועל.
הוא למד הרבה, הוא יודע, אבל לא מכיר. זה לא שלו. And so the Moyach HaDas, this is how the Rebbe describes it over here. I'm repeating the words inside now, so now that we will be able to relate to the words. Okay, you see I'm saying, lahachnis ha'inyan b'pnimius, to bring the inyan internally, to internalize it into his own moyach. B'pnimius klei ha'moyach. That his moyach should be able to relate and to accept that idea. And then he says further, sheyunach ha'inyan b'toiv. Yunach means he should rest. What does resting mean? Resting, something that a person knows, but it's outside of his moyach, it's something added to his moyach. It's not resting. He has to hold it. And he can forget it. Because if he has it, then we can forget it tomorrow. Because the inyan is not noch, it doesn't rest, meaning it doesn't become part of his own moyach, part of the way he thinks. Das is that it brings the seichel into the klei hameach, and yunach ho'ine betoiv etzlin, the inyan should rest well by him, v'yoyir ho'inyan b'moichai. And the third inyan, he says, yoyir ho'inyan b'moichai. Yoyir means it should shine. What does shining mean? Shining means that he recognizes the full significance. Significance.
צריך להיות כאילו מואר, צריך לראות האור שלו. ומה זה אומר? שהוא מבין, הוא מכיר את המשמעות של העניין.
כן. The full significance and the ramifications, what that means. It means yoyer.
Why does Yoyer hint to that?
What?
Why does Yoyer hint to the full recognition of the significance of the concept?
Because when one recognizes the significance of the concept, then that means that he recognizes how that concept describes his own world, describes the reality in which he lives. This means light. What is light? Whenever we mention the word light, I'll talk a little bit about it, because light is a very, very wonderful thing which we take for granted, but we don't realize the meaning. What is light? Light, it's like you put a light on, doesn't add anything to the room. Doesn't add anything. The room is exactly the same with and without light, except that light makes you aware where you are. It brings your whole surrounding to reality. Light, or מביא הכרה לך באיזה מקום אתה. לא משנה את המקום, כלום. לא מוסיף כלל אל המקום. כן? אבל מביא את המקום עם האדם. מה? That's meant light. And yoyer ho'inyan, that's what yoyer ho'inyan, that the seichel begins to shine. It illuminates his world. It gives him light. It makes him see what is the reality that he is in. Ma ha'emet shelo. This comes with das. This comes with das. Chochmah and Bina does not give it. Only with das. Because we know, we all experienced it, we're not children, that a person can know clearly what is the right thing and what is wrong to do, and yet he has a difficulty in doing it right. You know it's right, so what's so difficult about it? The answer is, I know it's right, but that's not who I am. And therefore, for me to do it, I have to force it upon myself. And that's not easy. But das makes the right, that's the way you see. That becomes your own choice.
So while it's still in Bina, because it doesn't, so to speak, it doesn't illuminate his intellect, so therefore, like the muscle with the light allows you to see the room with that light. So we can't see the world through that concept because it hasn't lit up his intellect yet. When it's still in Bina.
Right.
And once it's in the Das, it lights up the world, so to speak. That's the light through which now he can perceive which is around him.
The Indian becomes bright to him. If I may, I don't want to lose you, I don't want to confuse you. Just because you mentioned it, I want to clarify a little bit further. That the difference between the way he knows it in Bina and the way he knows it in Das is that in Bina he knows it from outside, he knows about something. In Das is where he goes inside. It's like a person standing outside of the window and looking into the room. What does he see? Exactly the same thing, what you see. But it's a difference between being outside and being inside. It's a different experience.
דעת זה כבר אתה יודע.
לא, דעת? לא, בינה זה...
בינה זה הבנה. שאתה מבין.
זה שאתה מרגיש.
דעת כבר הפנית את זה פנימה.
אתה מרגיש.
אתה יודע. לא, כן, אתה יודע. אתה מרגיש, אתה יודע. אתה יודע שזה ככה עובדה.
אתה יודע בפנים, זה הרגש.
While you were talking, I added this. כשאדם עומד מחוץ ומביט דרך החלון, הוא רואה את כל מה שאתה רואה. אבל יש חילוק. אתה בפנים, והוא בחוץ.
זה בינה, שהוא רואה מבחוץ, ודעת זה בפנים.
דבר שונה, כל ההרגש בזה כל שונה.
בחוץ קר, פה נעים. תרתי משמע.
The light in the room, that's Bina. When you're in a room and there's light, it doesn't change the room at all, but that's Bina?
No, the light that the seichel is meir, this is called das. This is when you have das. Because light doesn't change anything, but light brings the inyan together with you. You're there with you. You don't look at it from the distance, you're right in it. And this is the principle of seichel. I want you to understand that anything that a person understands with his true seichel, even though at first he's just learning about it. So I'm learning about something which is, I'm being taught. I wouldn't think of it myself. But I'm learning about it. So I know it. And ultimately, eventually, a person can come and recognize and understand this seichel like it would be his own seichel. The Rebbe Rashab, in one of the Maimorim, in the big Hemshech Samach Vov, I don't know if you heard about it, the big Hemshech Samach Vov, he says that at some point in time, especially when a Rav has to, paskin a shayla, has to bring a halacha, the poil, he gets to understand the inyan, this halacha, not just because it says so in the Shulchan Aruch, but he himself, his own seichel, agrees with what the Torah says. Then he can pass. ששכל האדם יסכים עם השכל של התורה. זה הדעת.
השכל
של האדם
כן.
יסכים עם השכל של התורה.
לדעת.
אבל זה דעת בדרגה גבוהה. אבל זהו עניין הדעת.
There is some, יש הרבה דברים שאני מסכים עם דעת התורה. לא לגנוב, זה דברים שאני מסכים עם דעת התורה. יש הרבה דברים שאנחנו...
כן, אבל, יש חילוק. אם אתה, כולם מבינים, אם אתה מסכים לא תגנוב מפני שזה דבר שאין נכון בין אדם לחברו, או מפני שהשם לא רוצה שאתה תגנוב. זה דבר שונה לגמרי. מה השם, לא מה השם, מה אכפת לו? מה אכפת לו השם מה אני גונב לו? זה דבר השונה לגמרי. להבין דעת התורה זאת אומרת להבין שהשם לא רוצה שאתה תגנוב. You seem like you found it. He said that many things that my seichel agrees with the seichel of Torah, like lo tignav. I said, but that's not the same thing. You think lo tignav because it's inappropriate in interhuman relations. It doesn't make sense. If you steal, the other guy is going to steal from you, and it's not going to be a peaceful life. But that's not what the Torah said. The Torah said Hashem said lo tignav. That you should understand that Hashem, it matters to Hashem. Hashem doesn't want you to steal. That's a totally different seichel. Okay, now we continue. Ki das hu his kashrus. Because das, the power of das, this moyach das, what is its capability? What is its action? His kashrus, meaning uniting and connecting. Kumei v'ha'odom yoda. The pasuk says v'ha'odom yoda. Adam knew, which means he knew. It says he knew his wife. Which means he knew his wife. He connected. That means that das. We see the word das in the Torah means to connect and unite. What this means so far, it means that in order to bring the seichel, chochmah and bina into this level where the seichel becomes part of my own seichel, that does not. The idea becomes part. The idea becomes part of my own seichel. That can only happen if I concentrate and connect with this seichel. It's called hiskashus. Just like we explained before. You can stand outside of the room and you know everything that's going on in the room. But when do you experience the room? When you go inside. That's called hiskashus. And that's what hiskashus means, going inside the seichel and reflecting on it personally. What does this mean? V'gam also das hu hargoshas hu inyan. Das also has the quality of hargoshas hu inyan, of feeling. Okay, this I have to discuss a little. Okay. You finish?
No, he just asked me. He says,
You can ask a question.
I'll ask you the question.
Yeah, sure.
He says that when you're outside and you look into the room,
Right.
and when you're inside and you look around the room, the guy who's outside also sees what's in the room.
Yes.
That's the Indian of Bina. He
That's
understands.
Bina. That's understanding.
He
Right.
understands. זה כל העניין. למרות שהוא רואה מה שיש בתוך החדר, זה הוא מבין, זה כמו בינה.
אבל לא מרגיש.
כן.
אבל דעת זה הרגש, להיות בפנים, נכון?
בפנים.
ההרגשה של להיות בפנים.
כן.
זאת אומרת שגם בינה, שהוא בחוץ, שהוא מסתכל בפנים, גם כן זה דעת. למה?
לא.
למה הוא מסתכל מה שאתה בפנים, מסתכל לפה, הוא גם מסתכל. הוא
כן.
גם נכנס לפנימיות
לא.
מבחוץ.
כן, אבל הוא לא בפניות. הוא יודע מה נמצא בבית. אבל הוא לא בפנים.
הוא מבחינה פיזית.
לא מבחינת פיזית, מבחינת הרגשת המוח. זה דבר שונה כלל. שונה. כשאדם בחוץ, everybody understands, most of you understand, כשאדם בחוץ, מביט בפנים, הוא רואה, וגם אולי מסכים, לא מסכים, חושב שזה טוב, לא טוב, אבל בכל עץ, בכל רגע, הוא יודע שהוא יכול turn away, and he doesn't see it. כשאדם בפנים, הוא בפנים.
אין אבל.
תבין, זה משל לשכל. שכל, בינה, גם כן שכל שלו, הוא מבין. אבל זה, העניין שהוא מבין, לא נעשה כמו שכלו, שזה מתקשר עמו, זה נעשה דבר של שכלו, זה המחשבה שלו. הוא יודע אודות את זה. אוקיי. But I want to speak, okay, the next description. V'gam das hu hargoshas hu inyan. Das is also hargoshas hu inyan. What is hargoshas? Hargoshas means to feel the inyan. This is another dimension in the seichel. Throughout, when a person has chokhmah and bina, one day I'll give you an extensive mashal to illustrate the point, but it's a little longer. When a person has chokhmah and bina, every idea that he has in chokhmah and bina, the idea is, he recognizes it, he understands it, it's true, but he has a reason to support it. A reason that makes it true. Like for instance, you see this cup standing on the table, right? You're not worried it's standing, you're not worried it's going to fall in, right? You see it standing. But it's not that because the cup is standing, because you see the table. What makes you so sure that the cup is not going to fall is because you also see the table. In other words, you see the reason that makes it real, that makes it stand. It's not true in and of itself. So something is holding it up. When you say, this is seichel. Seichel, everything is based on a reason, based on some kind of an explanation. It's not the absolute truth in itself. Hargoshas or inyan means something else completely. Hargoshas Inyan means that after he understood the Inyan in every detail, then he comes to see that this is not something that I know only because I have reason to accept it. But I see that this is true in itself. I no longer need any reason and explanations. I know that this is true. This is called Hargoshas Inyan. אני אסביר לך. אני רוצה. הרגושת העניין זאת אומרת שהוא מכיר את העניין לא על יסוד סברות.
כן.
אוקיי?
הבנתי את זה.
אבל מפני שהוא מרגיש שזה בעצם אמת. מצד עצמו.
איך הוא מגיע לזה?
זהו מחדש. הוא מגיע לזה אחר ההבנה, אחר החוכמה וההבנה, ואחר כך שהוא מתקשר בזה, אז הוא רואה שזה אמת בעצמו. לא שום סברות.
אבל להגיע לזה, הוא צריך לעבור.
לעבור לחוכמה. Okay, yes, one question.
I mean, obviously, I understand that it's muscle with the cup, but isn't the truth of the cup that the reason it's standing is because it is on the table? I mean, you say like you take it you look at the cup standing independent of the reason why it's standing, so it's not.
Well, let me tell you. Okay, you asked me the question, so because that's not the direction I wanted to go, but yes, let me explain to you. Okay, let us say if a person went through all the details that are involved in the fact that the cup stands on the table. Why is the cup standing on the table?
Why is the cup standing on the table? Because it's balanced on the table.
Because the table is balanced against the ground, and the ground has a center of gravity. You understand? And as a result of that, it's this cup standing on the table is one, not with the table. It's one with the ground itself. In other words, it cannot but stand. It has no choice. It cannot be any other way. Not because the table is holding it. It cannot but stand. That's a totally different understanding than saying the table is holding it up.
You're saying the second one is the first one that it has no choice but to stand is das?
That's the level of seeing it directly.
But the nature of the cup is to stand. It has nothing to do with
That's the nature of the cup to stand. The cup has to stand not only because it is, because this is the total reality.
It's gonna stand.
What?
It's just gonna stand.
It cannot be any other way. It's a total reality because there is gravity or whatever it is, and there's no way that it will not stand. When you go through all of that, then you have a totally different understanding of the cup standing on the table. Okay, but I'm not interested in the cup standing on the table.
1 second, so through Das you could have much less of the picture than actually through the understanding.
Yeah, but
Although
then
it's a reality for you,
but then that's right. The picture isn't a picture, but then it becomes reality. That's the important thing. So I'll give you the emotional that is significant. The union that we do want to talk about is again Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. When you say Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz, and you discuss it and you ask questions and you go through all the details that entail this Inyan. How do you understand the Inyan? Look, this tree wasn't here in Bereshis, in the 7 days of creation. Do you say that Hashem created this tree as well? Right? So we say no, Hashem created. So then you have to, in other words, all of these questions have to be dealt with. It's the bina of it, to discuss it in every detail until you recognize, yes, indeed, whatever I'm looking at, Hashem created, Hashem creates it. Okay? This it gives you a total different picture than what you started with. Then, if you delve into that and you reflect on that, b'hiskashus, you come to what's called das, where you no longer have even a question where it comes from. It's not that you have a question where it comes from, you had an answer. You had no question. This becomes part of your thinking. You think, I can see it. This is the reality. Couldn't be any other way. A question and an answer means, I have a question. Question means it could be like this, could be like this. Right? And then I have an answer. When you see it in Das, the hergish means that you see the reality. It's not a question.
So, and in every, בכל דבר יש הרגש. אחד זה קו בתורה. כשאתה, יש חוכמה בינה דעת בכל דבר. בכל דבר גשמי גם.
כן. כן. And this is what we are very careful with. That when a person goes into seichel, what's called world seichel, right? in scientific seichel, then that becomes his hergish. Then he's got a real long journey. Real long journey to come out of it. If this becomes his hergish, he's submerged into it. It's not just that he knows it. Then he becomes... The what?
The emotions that you said the word feeling, there is feeling.
No, the feelings that we're talking about here is not emotion.
Okay, so
Talking about seichel.
Okay, so the feelings also being produced from the seichel?
Yeah, but that we didn't come to that yet. The hergish that we're talking about here is ma'argoshas ha-seichel. The hergish in the seichel. This is why I'm explaining this whole thing. How can it be margish ha-seichel? Seichel is a svara. This can hergish. But the hergish ha-seichel is when you come to the seichel, to the clarity of it, to such a point where it's no longer a seichel. It's no longer based on a reason, on svara. It's the reality that you see. Then it's hergish.
But that reality, the heritage doesn't have to be the truth, because the fact that someone can come to the same thing through, so to speak, a scientific view of the world.
So for this we say that's true. No, that's why we say there are two nefoshes, and a person can be margish, two opposite things. Margish. There are two nefoshes. The nefesh olikis, the way the nefesh olikis understands things, and when the nefesh abahamis understands things. And chas v'sholem, the person lets himself, he can come to the point where the world becomes the reality, and then he has a difficulty to think of anything else. He becomes chas v'sholem. He becomes imprisoned in the world. I mean, we have the battle, right? This moment I see like this one. But when it becomes a hergish, it is not a battle anymore. That's the way he sees.
There's no way back?
What?
There's no way back?
There is a way back to everything, because you still have, but as I said, it's a long track. It's a very difficult thing to come out. It's a very difficult thing. I was going to say that philosophy, and going into philosophy concerning it, it's called boyeho lo yeshuvim. And once you enter it, it's very difficult to.
It's cold then?
Yeah, it's tough. But the truth, I mean, it doesn't happen. A person doesn't allow himself to go in because he sees the other side all the time. But if a person really submerges himself, allows himself to go into this, it's a big rachmanis. It's a very very difficult task to break out.
יכול להיות שגם כשאין הרגש, זה בגלל שאין דעת. למה?
מה? שאין הרגש?
כשאין הרגש, מן הסתם אין דעת.
כן.
למה אם היית מבין, היית מרגיש.
לא,
You can say like that.
לא. זה לא יהיה.
Right.
אפשר להבין, ואם לא יתקשר בזה, לא יחשוב על זה, לא יהיה מרגיש. Yes, there is a professor, you may have heard of him, Professor Block. He is a professor in university in London, Ontario, in Canada. He's a professor of philosophy. He was a professor of philosophy when he first came to 770, going back some 50 years ago. I remember when he first came, he was a bacher. He was already older bacher, he was already a professor of philosophy. And he started learning Torah. And he said, that's it. This is what he was looking for, right? But he was a professor. And he's teaching philosophy all these years. He's teaching all of these, philosophy, all different opinions. This one said this one said this, one said that. So I asked him, how do you relate to philosophy when you can't really relate to it? He says, well, all my job is to tell them what they think. I'm not telling what the truth is, I'm telling what they think. He himself is a Chassid Shiri. And all his children are Chassid Shiri. Is that his job? I'm sure that eventually he talks to his students and tells them something about the true philosophy. Yeah. But in any case, we have to stop now. So this is Chochmah, Bina, V'das. I said Das is the ultimate purpose, power of Seichel. This is where we say Seichel leads a person. That's only when it comes into Das. And if a person just follows through because he knows this is the right thing, it pays, it's the right thing, it's going to be good. It does not relate to it at least a little bit in the Moyach HaDas, he's always going to feel uncomfortable. He's like outside. I'm doing it, but I'm not it. My mind is elsewhere. This is why it's important to learn and to understand what you're learning and then to reflect on it. What does it mean? Then you begin to feel that this is your thing. This is also important that one learns things that he can more easily relate to. Like, the first thing that a Yid about Tshuva has to know, this is a little bit off the topic, but I'm explaining to you. The first thing a Tshuva has to know is that he is a Jew, a Yid, part of this nation to whom Hashem gave the Torah. Who Yehudi, who member, Nitzik Me'ha'omah she'Hashem natan Torato. In that respect, this is him. This he can relate right away. This is who I am. And as a result of that, the whole Torah is mine. And I belong to Torah. It's not something that I'm learning about, and I have to know, I understand, is it right, wrong, this is my thing to start with. This is something, the Indian that a Yid is the first thing that we can really relate to. Because we know that any Yid, no matter where he is, on Wall Street or in Hollywood, if you come to him and tell him, you're not Jewish, he'll fire up. He'll fire up. The worst thing you can say, no matter what he does. But if you tell him, I'm not Jewish, this is the worst thing. So this is the first thing that connects a Yid with Torah. And this is something which does not come up as seichel. You don't have to argue with no basis, no reasoning. This is it. This is the fact. This is what I feel. This is called hergish. This is called hergish adas. And that brings a person into reality.
That's called das, knowing you're a Jew.
That we can know in das. First thing. But I'm sure I remember your question.